Do you think that GM got to be where they are in the auto industry by themselves? Huh? It took people. It took the workers, the laborers on the line. So they are obligated to us also.
This mammoth building, which was the first building to go up beyond Billy Penn's hat, is a symbol to homeless people of power in the city. It's also a symbol of their helplessness, that while these buildings of this sort go up, you see, there are more homeless people put into the street.
What do we want? Houses! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Houses! When do we want it? Now!
La policía protege estos desmanes.
The cops and the police are protecting these strikebreakers.
But the money ain't our factor. The main factor is health and safety. My life is worth more than $7.20 an hour.
You're street people, it's just hard to get a job if you don't have an address and a telephone number. $20 a day, you can't make it on that.
What are you going to do with it? Time you rent a room, buy cigarettes, eat, it's gone.
It's gone.
There's nothing left.
I haven't figured out yet what a union could do for a transient person like, you know, the people who are here working.
Our leadership had told us not to trust their leadership. Their leadership in the past had told their membership not to trust our membership, so there was just a whole lot of mistrust.
We are not asking anyone to give their identity up, but we must come together as an entity to survive.
We have to stand up for each other.
So what we did was we organized to fight back and to take back what's ours. Because we are the sons and the brothers and the sisters and the aunts and uncles and grandchildren of the people that built this country, and this is ours.
And when your children go to school, and later on in the future, when they read those history books, they're going to ask you, Dad, Mom, which side were you on in 1988 in November? Were you inside of the workers, or were you inside of the goddamn hotel owners? And you're going to let them know.
We're not stupid. We know what's going on, and we're sick of their whitewash and propaganda and cover-up.
We're going to demand, we're not asking, we're not begging, that we're getting up off our hands and knees, and we're going to begin to trade you blow for blood, because we insist that this country be all that it can be.
Good evening and welcome to Dead Air Live. Tonight's show is about May Day, International Workers' Day, and a day that is celebrated around the world by workers everywhere. Many people did not go to work today in countries around the world because it was a national holiday or because they simply didn't go to work to join demonstrations, rallies, and celebrations. In fact, we learned that in South Korea today, a nationally organized general strike is underway after more than 14,000 riot police broke a 3-day strike of shipyard workers at Hyundai. And in many Latin American countries, in Europe, in Africa, and elsewhere, people are celebrating May Day today in international solidarity. In this country, May Day was chosen some time ago by housing activists and homeless people to launch a nationally organized takeover of abandoned HUD buildings. And we learned that last night at midnight in Philadelphia, people broke into a building and set themselves up, and they were joined this morning by 50 supporters. And about 5 minutes ago, I guess, in New York City, a number of people occupied a building there as well. And we understand that similar actions are going on in between 8 and 12 cities in the country. This represents a unique initiative by homeless people to organize on a national basis these occupations. But what is May Day? And why is it that so many of us in this country do not celebrate it today? And many of us, in fact, don't know what its meaning is. Tonight on the show, we have 5 guests who are going to help us to gain a sense of what the meaning of May Day is, what its history is, and how it's relevant to our lives and our struggles today. I'd like to begin by introducing our 5 guests. Tonight we have to my left a historian, activist, and author, Peter Linebaugh. Welcome, Peter. Among other things, Peter has been the author of a number of half-pint pamphlets that are in circulation, and several of them are on the history of May Day. And we'll be asking Peter tonight to help us to remember some of the forgotten history of this day. Also on the show, Xavier, union organizer with Local 26 of the Hotel and Restaurant Employees Union. Xavier was a shop steward and a maintenance worker at the Ritz-Carlton for 9 years before organizing full-time with the union about a year ago. Good evening, Xavier. To your right, we have Savina Martin and we have Barbara Shelley, 2 women living in Roxbury, longtime community organizers and activists, who are here as well tonight to talk to us about some of their struggles to gain control, economic and social control over their communities. They have experiences struggling for housing, for land, and around many of the issues that arise out of conditions of poverty in Roxbury. Welcome, both of you, tonight. To your right is Mike Holden, the Vice President of Local 1205 of the Amalgamated Transit Union, a bus driver who's been on strike now with the Greyhound strike for getting on 9 weeks. We've invited Mike tonight to bring us up to date on news on the Greyhound strike and to inform us on ways in which we can support the strike at this moment. I'd like to welcome you all, and I thought I might begin the show, Peter, with your pamphlet, The Incomplete, True, Authentic, and Wonderful History of May Day. And in this pamphlet, Peter, you say that there is both a red side and a green side to May Day, and I wanted to start the program by asking you to explain that.
Okay, yeah, there's the green side and the red side to May Day. And we saw some of the green side with a first clip of the children dancing around the maypole of the video you showed earlier. And there's pictures of it back there. Kids don't do it so much anymore, which is a real shame because it gets kids outside, they learn to dance, and they learn to use their bodies and, you know, breathe and have a good time. And this is the foundation of any education. You know, education is not sitting and being taught, given rote learning, but it's enjoying life. I'm not quite sure when this kind of dancing stopped, though they do it in other parts of the world. I know in the British West Indies and Jamaica, they dance all the time on May Day, every parish in Jamaica. But these kind of dances, May Day dances, began, long before even Christ was born, you know, in the woodland epoch of history when most of the continents were covered with a green mantle of wood. And their lives were very much determined by the cycle of the seasons. And so in the temperate zones anyway, when spring came, it was a time of action, a time of fruition, a time of creation, a time when things were blossoming and blooming. And I think there's this kind of May Day in all of us. My former mother-in-law used to, she'd call me up and say, "Hooray, hooray, the 1st of May, outdoor screwing begins today." You know, so this is definitely the green side, you know, coming up, those energies of life. It's a time for them to explode, a time to live. And this was celebrated. It was acknowledged by all kinds of people, straight people, gay people, men, women. And there were special holidays. And when Christianity came, of course, they had to deal with it. You know, we have the Christmas tree. Now, you won't find the Christmas tree in the New Testament. You know, this comes from the woodland epoch of history. Same with the maypole. And this is the day for Christians of Philip and James. And little flowers are named after these saints. And much of this stuff is forgotten. It's not taught anymore, but it carried on in an underground. So in the Middle Ages, Joan of Arc was really associated with May Day. She's known as a French national hero, but more than that, she was a woman's heroine who stood for the independent power of women. This would have been in Europe of the Middle Ages. And then at the age of discovery, you know, when the Tudors and the wife killer Henry VIII came to the throne, they tried to do away with May Day. And they tried, because May Day was not a day to work. You know, so we thought that May Day was a time to celebrate life. They said, no, you have to work. This is the origin of the puritanical work ethic. And it took several centuries to establish this work ethic, which says you're no good unless you work. And there's no work unless you make profit for a boss. So this is when you have the conquest of the continents, the beginning of the slave trade, and the turning of people into proletarians, basically. The first Europeans who came to Massachusetts were the first ones to start a May Day, because coming from Europe was also the contradictions of Europe, between the bosses and between those who were looking for a life to live.
So I'm thinking, can I ask you just quickly, in Latin America, I learned that many people, when they speak of May Day, speak of the day of the Chicago martyrs. And this has to do with experiences in Chicago around Haymarket?
This gets to the red side. Can I just say one more thing on the green side?
Yeah.
Just for Massachusetts and Somerville especially. The first May Day was in Quincy in 1627. Thomas Morton put up a maypole. Indians, Hispanic people, runaway servants, and women all went and danced, and the Puritans threw him out. They waged war on Marymount, and that put an end. That sort of, Nathaniel Hawthorne said that was the victory of filthy lucre, of money, over the free spirit of the many different kinds of people that went on to make up America. The red side of May Day, that is indicated by the Haymarket poster behind you, and that starts in 1886 in Chicago, the city on the make, where back at that time, McCormick, the big plutocrats, the robber barons, were looking to the conquest of the Midwest with their railways, with their meat packing houses. They were looking to the extermination of Indians. That was the year of the Apache Wars, which Geronimo led. Sitting Bull fought and struggled in that year. But people from Europe, people from the South, black people and white people, they were fighting for an 8-hour day. And the year before 1886, it was announced by an International Association of Workers that after the 1st of May, 1886, it is resolved that the working day shall be 8 hours. And they went on strike, they mounted a national campaign, and on a fateful, fateful day of May 4th, 1886, at a rally in Chicago, at Haymarket in Chicago, the police came to listen to trade unionists and working people who had been making speeches all day. Towards the end of the evening, the crowds had dwindled, and a bomb was thrown, and several policemen were killed. Now, to this day, no one's sure who threw that bomb. But one thing is sure, the 8-hour day didn't come, and that launched a series of repression against working people, the proletarians of the North, that more or less coincided with the extermination and Indian wars in the Dakotas and in the Southwest, as well as the beginning of lynching against former slaves, Afro-American people. So that's in a nutshell, 1886 really inaugurated a period of heavy repression, where the sheriff said, arrest them first, look up the law later. Bookstores were broken into, people were arrested out of bed in the middle of the night, and it instituted a horrific, repressive period.
And part of the repression was to take away the celebrations of May Day, or was it after that that we began to celebrate May Day?
What happened is that the police selected 7 agitators, 7 anarchists, they call them. So one was a Methodist, Sam Fielden. Another, Albert Parsons, had been a Confederate general who married a former slave, Lucy Parsons. But they called them anarchists, and it took them a couple years, and they hanged them. They hanged them by the neck until they were dead, to the eternal shame of the justice, so-called justice system of the state of Illinois and the United States more generally. An international campaign around the world was instituted to save them from the gallows. In Mexico, in England, in Russia, in Italy, in Spain, all over. This failed. They were hanged. But as a result of that, May Day became an international holiday and started the movement internationally for a shorter working day. Then in the United States, I think it was in the second administration of Grover Cleveland, the effort was made to separate the labor movement in the United States from the world labor movement. At just that moment when the American working class was becoming more international than it had ever been. And they did this in a very clever way. They said, from now on, you can have that Labor Day, but it's going to be in September. And then in the 20th century, they did a huge amount of work, of energy, to repress our knowledge of May Day and say it's a foreign thing. It belongs to Russia or to the Soviet Union or the Eastern Bloc. But it's an American holiday. Actually, it's a world holiday, you know, because all people from all over the world live in America. And it's a working person's holiday, as you said at the beginning of the show.
What's interesting for me is that having its roots in this country, at the same time, it's not being celebrated in this country today. And what I'm hoping tonight we can do, partly to make up for that, is to take the show as a chance to reflect on and discuss some of the struggles that we are engaged in, which belong in a discussion of May Day because they are different aspects of the May Day history. And when we speak about May Day tonight, I'm hoping that we can connect it, at least in some form, with the organizing struggles that we've been involved in, with the housing and community activities we've been involved in, and also in the ongoing struggle right now of the Greyhound workers nationally who have been on strike now for 9 weeks. And we're going to go now to take a look at a tape that was shot last week on the Greyhound picket line, and then we'll come back and have a chat with Mike about the strike.
People think it's an easy job. One man says, "Oh, you're just driving a bus." But I go down and back to New York. I'm down there an hour and a half, 5 days a week. I work 4 days, have 2 days off, and I start again. So 5 days a week, I'm doing round trips to New York City, or 480 miles a day. Next month, I'd be starting my 28th year, and I have over 2.5 million miles of safe driving without putting a scratch on a bus. You got to run people over? Well, you got every one of them will run you over. Every one of them, they're unexperienced.
Today is the end of the 8th week, and the main issue is still that the company has refused to negotiate with us. What they wanted from us was for us to agree to a contract that would give them the unrestricted right to subcontract out bus routes and close the garages. Now, I'm a bus driver. If the company has the right to hire you and your dad, who own buses, to come in and operate the trips between Boston and New York, what do I do for a living now? Wages are really a peripheral issue once you take that into consideration. I mean, it wouldn't matter if they paid us, $100 an hour. If you don't have a job, it doesn't matter what they're paying you. But we have taken many pay cuts in the last 8 years, 7 years, and our wages are very low now. They're down to the same level that they were in 1975. And I mean, that is not making. I'm not talking about the buying power. I'm talking about the actual wage. Physically, the actual rate of pay is identical to what it was in 1975. And this contract with the subcontracting clause was to be a 6-year contract with no increase in pay. So so that had we agreed to this, we would be in 1996 working for wages that were 21 years old.
You've got a company here that just wants to break working people that are just looking for a little respect and dignity. And it's labor's responsibility to stick with labor. This is really a shame what's happening here. These people, they have families to feed too.
Well, who wanted the strike, the union or the company? The company wanted it from the beginning. This is Friday afternoon at what, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock? And normally you wouldn't be able to walk through that terminal because it would be so packed with people.
All right.
And today you're lucky if you see 10 or 12 people in there, you know?
Welcome back to the studio. What we've just seen was a tape that was shot on Friday in downtown Boston at the picket line. And one of the persons interviewed, Mike Holden, is with us tonight. Mike, welcome again to the studio.
Thank you.
The tape explained, I think, a lot of the issues of why you're out on strike. Maybe you could update us even more with the ways that people can support and, in fact, what happened today.
Well, naturally, the best way people can support us is simply by not using Greyhound. There are plenty of other alternatives, especially here in Boston, to travel to New York or Hartford or any place else you wish to go. There are several other bus carriers, Bonanza, Peter Pan, and as well Amtrak. If you'd like to take the train, that's even a little bit more comfortable than the bus. So that really is the biggest way that we can get support, and we've been very successful in doing that, in keeping people off the bus. We have informational pickets out in front of the terminal as well as the normal pickets, and the informational pickets are drivers who simply ask the question, can I help you with information? And most people respond very well. When people come to the terminal, they're usually one of two types. They're either the person who simply doesn't care, or they're the person who doesn't think that they have an alternative. So when it's explained to them that they literally only have to walk 1 block around the corner to get on an express Bonanza bus to New York City, they love the idea and they're all for it. So we've been really successful. Today, one of the things that we did, we spent a lot of time over at our lawyer's office, and we've been working on this for several weeks now. And it's legislation that's being proposed for a city ordinance here in Boston that will disallow, will make it illegal for companies to hire strike breakers, will make it illegal for any company to hire replacements while there is a strike in progress. New York City has a similar bill that was passed back in 1951, and the union Local 1202 in New York was very successful in joining the company from hiring anyone. It was at first a temporary injunction, and then it became permanent. So,
Mike, on the picket line on Friday, I asked you about scabbing. You had said that the company anticipated or counted on 30 to 40% of drivers crossing the picket line?
Well, yeah, we don't know for certain, but it seemed like their plan when they perceived us going out on strike, and certainly they knew we were going to, given the contract offer, it seemed as though they anticipated 25 to 30% of the people returning to work the next day. And that didn't happen at all. I mean, nationwide we have about 9,300 members in the union, and only 200 have returned to work, so that's just about 2%. That's pretty good, I think.
That's excellent. Have they been able to recruit scabs who
Yeah,
were
they have been. That's an interesting thing you mentioned. They have been able to hire quite a few new people. 12 of them down in the Texas area came out and joined the picket line. We have one in Lewiston, Maine, who's sitting on a fence, and we think very soon will be coming over and joining the strike. Certainly there's no reason for these people to quit their job now that they have it, and once they've spent 6 to 8 weeks working for Greyhound lines without a union on the property, they realize exactly why we're out here, and they want to be part of it. So.
All right. Where are the scabs coming from? The scabs that have crossed the line, where would they have come from?
Well, originally in the early weeks of the strike, the scabs that were working out of Boston did come from places further south or the Midwest, where unemployment is somewhat higher. But now I believe that most of the scabs who work here in Boston are local residents. You know, they either live in Boston or the outlying towns. And I guess it's just kind of shows you how really the education in this country, we need to do something about educating youngsters. And you know, I don't think anybody talks in school systems today about well, I guess when I grew up, I had grandparents who were union people. And now kids that grow up, perhaps they only had great-grandparents who were union people. So they don't get the direct connection that's made. They don't get the direct experience from people in their families.
Xavier, can I ask you, do you have a similar sense from your organizing that there is a need for families to pass down this kind of knowledge, for the education to take place within the community itself?
Definitely, because America is built on the sweat of people who work. If to build America, you had to cut down all the trees to build all this concrete jungle we have here. And it took blood, sweat, and tears. And we see back then there was a lot of exploitation, and that's why unions come in on the throne. Mm-hmm. And to keep that alive, we have to educate the kids.
And do that ourselves?
Yeah, we have to do it ourselves. Charity begins at home.
So in the instance of Local 26, you have a large union in Boston. With Greyhound, the actual local is about, what, 100 people in the area?
Roughly it's about 110 active employees, you know. That's active, I mean, as opposed to retirees. So, you know, Local 26 is over 5,000 people in the city of Boston, and there are many other locals that big in Boston as well. And here we are, just 100 employees and only 9,000 nationwide. So that creates a different set of problems for us as far as organizing and stuff. But luckily, we've always maintained a very strong organization in this part of the country. So.
Well, a victory for Greyhound will be a victory for Local 26. It will be a victory for people who are struggling in other community areas as well.
A victory for the Greyhound strikers.
A victory for the Greyhound strikers. I guess what I'd like to ask as well is how people who are not actually employed in unions right now, but who are engaged in some other struggles, for instance, Savina, in the community, the union struggle, how does it come across? Why is it an important struggle? And I guess that's my question. What is the relationship for the union struggle and the community one?
Well, for basic necessities to live on, you know, we in our community, what we're struggling for is better jobs, decent affordable housing, decent health care, and education, basically. And you know, what we find, what's happening now in our community is a lot of the mothers that are struggling to raise their children are coming out and saying that, you know, if you, the elected officials, and those that are the movers and the shakers in the community aren't going to do your job, watch out, because here, you know, we're coming through, you know, and we're saying we're going to go to any lengths that we possibly can for our own social and economic stability. You know, it's like we're taking matters in our own hands to rebuild and to educate our children.
All right. I want to introduce the next tape on that note, because it's a tape that's been put together from some of the housing struggles around the country, and it reflects, I think, part of the experience that you're describing, which is people organizing in the community to get a place to live and to get control of their community. So let's take a look at a tape and then come back.
But where there are homeless people and people don't have anywhere to live, looking for somewhere to get out of the cold, you know, and we're in America. This is what America is all about. Is this what's happening? So we keep grabbing and grabbing and grabbing, and folks is getting put off. No, we're not going to stand for it. And whatever is necessary, folks going to have to come together. We're going to have to stop fighting each other, banging each other in the back. We're going to have to take our own lives in our own hands.
Everybody knows why we're squatting. They won't give the houses to them, so we're going to take them anyway, because we know they belong to it. We're fired up and fed up. We're going to take these houses.
We can go out there in the street and freeze to death, and they say that's just fine. But we can come in here and break a lock off the door, and they say you did something wrong.
I think many of the people in this room, perhaps most, realize that the only reason we have empty apartments is because they're uninhabitable, not because we don't want people to live in them.
If you want somebody to fix them, I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say, I can put back on one of the toilets that was taken off. I can help put back in one of those windows that was taken out. And we didn't do it. We want to help repair. We want to help put our lives back together again.
We've been trying to work and trying to open the doors in different communities in Philadelphia and across the country. Trying to get the city to help the poor. That's what we've been trying to do for the last 4 years. You may have a house, yes, but there's somebody who don't have a house. Is that right?
What is happening basically is that you're not rich, you cannot afford to rent an apartment. Our warehousing of apartment is increasing. There is a lot more harassment of tenants.
These are the ignorant people, man, that don't realize that that same guy that came over here and said that we don't have to live like this, sooner or later, he's going to wind up living in a lot like this because he will not be able to afford the rent.
The powers that be in this city do not want all these low-skilled, unemployed people living in their own backyards because it represents a time bomb.
Yes. Well, that's part of the problem also of this society, that private property is sacred. It's more important than even human life, you know, because they are willing to keep thousands of buildings empty that can be rehabilitated and let people sleeping and being on the street where they can die easy and nicely without no one even know it.
I'm standing for something that I believe I have a right to have. I have a right. My father grew up here. I grew up here. I got my ass kicked over here, and I kicked a lot of ass over here. This belongs to me, not some individual that comes from, you know, NYU, you know, or from, you know, the West Coast and says, well, I feel like living on the Lower East Side because it's popular. That's bullshit, man. Where the fuck are you going to put all of the poor people? Huh?
Hello again, welcome back to the studio. We're going to start the discussion off now by asking Savina Martin to tell us a little bit about the experiences she's had over the past few years organizing in the community around a number of issues. And perhaps you could start, Savina, by telling us about some of the struggles for housing that you've been organizing.
Most of the struggles that we've been engaged in is just taking it back, taking housing. We think it's insanity to see hundreds of abandoned property just sitting there. And while people are starving and while people are burning to death, trying to keep warm in abandoned buildings, and you know, it's just insanity. And what we're doing is just, we've been organizing to just take over these properties.
Direct actions to get into a building and occupy it?
To hold on to them as long as we can, yes, to, you know, to build a team and to outreach in the community to get other local activists and other organizations that are geared towards the same vision that we have in terms of, you know, getting out there and taking action. We've been getting those type of folks involved with us to stand in solidarity with us and take over the housing. There's just a history that goes along with it from 1986 up to now in terms of homeless people fighting their own interest to get shelter, food, clothing, and the whole 9 yards.
So all of them, all these issues are being connected, the housing, the health?
You cannot do one without the other. You cannot, you know, what we're saying now is how can we live in a house without a livable wage, making a livable wage, in order to, you know, to maintain, you know, and to live. You have to have a job. You have to have proper health care, education for your children. We're fighting for the whole ball of wax in our community, and you know, there's enough of us to do that, and that's what we see is happening now, simply because people are desperate and people are looking for answers, and that's why we're organizing. We've been able to occupy or to get one building out of the struggle within the community of Roxbury, and what we're going to do with that is to build a resource center and some temporary housing for people, an educational center, so that people can understand what's happening in society as well, and how we can connect and continue on to move forward to fight for the things that we need, like the health care, the education, the food, and the shelter.
But it sounds like it's about also more than just providing services, that it's the organizing itself, the politicizing work is really important as well.
It's definitely going beyond just providing some type of multi-service. It's about educating people, because the people are there. We're emerging out of our own struggles. We're coming out of this situation where we're saying, hey, something's wrong here. You know, we can't get housing, decent, affordable housing. You know, our children are angry. There is something happening in our community. We're not dumping the drugs in there. We're not dumping the guns, and our kids are angry. They know that they can't survive working in Burger Kings or Cheap Eats when their mom has 3 or 4 other children at home, and they're bored to death in school. Something's, you know, going on, and you know, we have to vent it somewhere, you know, and we're definitely saying it has to begin at home if we can get a home. Mm-hmm. You know, otherwise, we see this people roaming around out of control because people are looking for answers, and you know, we're in need of support outside of the community to come in and help us provide and politicize the youth in the community, you know, and let them understand that they are somebody and that they do come from, they do have roots, and there's a whole culture behind, you know, us being there, and
so it sounds
that's
like
what we're doing.
Yeah, it sounds like similar to what Peter, you were talking about before in terms of passing this history down, that it's not going to be given to us unless we pass it on ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't have education without the home. When people say education begins at home, well, that's a powerful point, and we can't have we make our history, you know, as you were saying. It's our class has built this country in its many different communities, and we have to struggle to get it back. Mm-hmm. And we also have to struggle, this was the point I was making, that to struggle for our history, for that knowledge, because that's also been taken away from us and we suffer from amnesia, and we have to recover from amnesia by learning about the struggle of our parents, our grandparents, and ancestors.
I want to also mention something, which is that I think a lot of people, when they think of homeless people, if they themselves are living in a home, they think it's a long way away from their own reality. And something that I've learned from these tapes and from meeting with people who are organizing in the homeless struggle is that none of us are very far away from being homeless. But we still have this distance in our minds. And Barbara, if I can just ask you to share with us some of your own experiences. You've been homeless for the past year or so, and how does this change the reality of life for you?
Well, it's definitely a struggle. It's very frustrating. I'm a mother of 4 children, and basically what's real is I don't have any way of bringing up my children in a secured environment because I'm just living in a temporary luxury shelter. You know, it's, you know, I have to kind of give my children an image of a home. You know, I mean, I don't lie to them. They realize what kind of situation that we're in, but I have to give them something to hold on to, which is hope, you know. And I know through this struggle, I'm trying to re-educate myself and to get the knowledge that I need. So when I get out of this, or rather when I get into this, you know, when I get into a home, I can show somebody else how to do it, you know. But it's frustrating. It's frustrating because they have a freeze on Section 8s. They have subsidized housing in private housing. But, you know, I think if you're not a cousin or an aunt or an uncle, you're not going to get into those places. So it's, I just keep coming into a dead end. And for a year now, it's just becoming very frustrating, and it's really painful not to have a home and to give my children that security that they need so desperately, you know, to let them know that they have a place in this world, you know. It's really painful.
You know what I want to do is I want us to take a look at one more video and come right back to the discussion. This is about the preparations for a strike by the hotel workers, the Local 26 struggle that achieved a victory in the form of a housing trust fund. And in this linked the union struggle with the struggle for housing in the community. So let's take a look at a short video and then come back to the discussion, if we could. Okay.
We're strong enough to win, strong enough to challenge the law, strong enough to change a stupid law that says we have no right to negotiate what's good for our family. We have to stand up for each other. So we're going to challenge them at the negotiating table. We're going to challenge them in the hotels. Sheraton, Boston, are you ready? Hilton Hotel, are you ready? Park Plaza, are you ready? Local 26, are you ready? Remember in 1982, they tried to say that only 5 of us could sit at the table. And we've shown them that they don't tell us anything. He's our spiritual leader. Let me ask our brother, our good friend, and our spiritual leader, Reverend Hagler, to come up and start the
We will not accept a contract spanning 5 to 6 years. We reserve the right of shorter negotiations and quicker progression. Hear us clearly. We are union. We are Local 26. We are that fighting and winning Local 26. For we know where you live, like Roger Saunders in the Back Bay. We know where you live, like Ronald Drucker in Newtonville. We know where you live, sisters and brothers. They can run, but they can't hide. And they can run, as I said, but they will not be able to hide. But we will take this strike, if it must be a strike, to their front door, to their bell. Guess who's coming to dinner? I just stopped by to let you know that you are not alone. Your ranks are far larger than even Local 26, for they extend all through this community. And sisters and brothers, if the time comes and you got to go to jail, move over, because I'm coming with you. God bless you. When you cast that vote, remember, there's going to be history made here. History made in this strike, if it need be. And when your children go to school, and later on in the future, when they read those history books, they're going to ask you, Dad, Mom, which side were you on in 1988 in November? Were you on the side of the workers, or were you on the side of the goddamn hotel owners? And you're going to let them know. You're going to let them know.
Some of us work in hotels where we can't go in and get a room because it costs too much. Some of us work in hotel restaurants where we can't go in and get a meal because it costs too much. When is this world going to come to realize that it's going to be justice for everybody, or there's not going to be any justice for anybody?
Let me introduce you our negotiating committee. You got to be patient. Remember, our negotiating committee is 165 workers. So I'm going to introduce you. I call your name. I want you to come up here where you belong in the leadership of the union. The negotiating committee: John Emmett, Pedro Rodriguez, Henny Belair.
And we fly just like birds of a feather.
Who are we? We're the front services that greet the guests, bring in their bags and check them in. We're proud to be hotel workers. Who are we? We're the cooks. We're the wait people. We're the bartenders. We're the telephone operators. We're the ones who make the guests feel at home. We're proud to be hotel workers. We're kitchen people. We're stewarding. We're mighty housekeepers. The heart of the hotel, the soul of the union. We are hotel workers. We are down to 4 issues. And the 4 issues is sick days, wages, roll call, and housing. Those are the 4 issues left. While we were upstairs, I got a report that the media said that we've gone soft on housing. Gang, we've spent 2.5 years building a dream. As Reverend Jackson says, he is a dream maker and we are too. He stood up at the National Convention and he talked about hotel workers. We not only have a right to dream, we have a right to succeed. Yes. We're strong. We're not just back of the house, we're the entire hotel. And we should remember, because it's important, if they made us go on strike, and strike we would have done, and kick their ass we would have done. Thank you.
Welcome back to the studio. We've just seen a tape of the 1988 struggle by Boston's Local 26 hotel workers, and we have Xavier, one of the organizers of the union, with us tonight. Dominic Bozzotto, the president of the union, opened up by saying that hotel workers work in Boston and they have a right to live in Boston. You struggled for a housing trust fund. Was this basically because the wages that people are earning are not enough for them to live in this city?
Exactly. You find most people who work in hotels are people that come from a foreign country. We have 85 different languages of people that we represent. And most of these people, they don't know the laws of the land. They don't know what's going on. And they are being cheated. And as you saw my boss there, what he said, that they have a right to live in the city. And with all this money they're paying for rent, you pay $800-900 for rent, and you make the money so meager, it's so little, that you have people working in the morning and they work in the evening, and even on Sundays, on Saturdays they work. As an organizer, it's very difficult to organize non-union hotels, because you catch the guy in the morning, you say, well, you don't catch him in the morning, you catch him in the evening. In the evening, he's on another job. You say, well, I'll catch him on the weekend. You go in the weekend, he's driving taxi. Now, we talk of homes. We talk of homes now. Where's the love? Where's the time spent with the family? You see, all these things divides family. And these are the type of, that's why we see our countries like that. We find all this killing going on and all kind of stuff, drugs, you know, because there is no time spent with the family. The mother is working, the father is working, the child is he's on her own doing her thing or their thing. And what we're saying, what my boss was saying there, is that these people work here for you, and we want you to put aside some money where we can build affordable housing. If they wish to buy their own house, we'll have it at a reasonable stage. And it was a crazy idea when we first brought it on the table. It sounded crazy to us, but we worked with it. They told us it was crazy. People say, well, that's breaking the law. And we said, well, we're gonna give it a try. Where is faith, there is hope, and where there is faith, there is God. And we took the fight on. We took the case to Washington, D.C. We decided to amend it half-heartedly, and today is history. And I'm very proud to be part of that. And I wish I hope all people who works in hotels that Local 26 represent should be very proud of themselves. And talking of housing, with all the abandoned buildings that we have a right to say, no, well, you have this abandoned building here. We want it to build up because you got too many people on the streets. You have this empty lot here. There are people on the street. We want to build houses. And that's what it's all about.
Was the Housing Trust Fund, is it for the community as well as just for members of Local 26? Is it a struggle that involves, for instance, struggling against the redlining of whole communities?
Let me put it that way. It would be very unjust for the hotel owners to put money aside and then somebody coming from the outside to live off that. That's why when I said there are empty lots and there are vacant building we can use. Now, if the government give us that, we can turn around and tell the hotel people, well, the government provide with this and the government provide with that. These people, the minority people, have a right just like you have a right. You can't say that's your money. We can say, well, the government provide with that, and these people have a right just like you. But the hotel, yes, is for hotel workers, but we do help outsiders. We have people who, look at Charles Smith, that guy we have here. I mean, these people who was living in this guy apartment was not Local 26 members, but we took the fight. We went in there and saw the unjust that this guy was doing, and we straightened him up. So in the future, yes, minority gonna come in.
Savina, does the struggle that Local 26 engaged in, from the standpoint of not being a hotel worker in the union, what is the importance of their struggle to the larger struggle of homeless people to organize?
The people that live in the community too. The hotel workers are those of us that are struggling to survive, and that can be one paycheck away from becoming homeless at any given time. I don't know, this is such a victory for Local 26. I can remember when they came and helped us out when we had taken over a building in the South End, and we should all, stand in solidarity together, and help push this forward.
Again, talking of solidarity, What you said is very true, and I was just looking at that sign here, and something come to my mind. You see that face here? Yeah. Let's look at it. When we like that, we divide it. You can slap a man, but how hard can you slap him? Well, when you put your fist like that, that's beautiful. You put your fist like that and you hit a man, there's power in that. And what she just said there is togetherness. We have to stand together. If we don't stand together, we're gonna fall. There'll be division. And it's one hand can clap. You need two hands to clap. Yeah. And I know we all cannot be stars because we need audience to clap also. We all cannot be heroes, there has to be audience. But we all, in solidarity, can stand together and build a better America. Because there's too much waste going on here. I can remember when I first started working at the Ritz, there was one set people eating and one set wouldn't eat. And I said, well, how come these people eat and these people didn't eat? And they says, well, man, you know, you work in the back of the house, you ain't supposed to eat. And I said, well, that's nonsense. I work here. My mother always say, where you work the horse, that's where you graze it. So I would go down in the kitchen and eat. And my boss came and he says, Xavier, next time you do that, you will be in the outside looking in the inside. And I says, yes, that might be true. I say, I came from a foreign country, but I know people in high places, just like you do. And I say, it's against the law to do that. That's discrimination. You're feeding one set and you're not feeding one set. And I say, I can go down I went in the trash and brought out food. And there was food there. And I says, here, you're wasting that food, and you have people working for you, and you don't feed them. And we fight. I mean, and I brought 2 others. Next day I brought 2 more. Then he started backing off. He says, look what you did. You have a team now. I say, yeah, feed them. All you have to do is feed them. But unless we stand together, we're not gonna make it. We're not gonna go through. We have to stand together.
People are displaced workers. You know, we're displaced workers, and you know, just like the auto workers are just being laid off by the thousands, and the oil field workers, and I can just remember being in Albuquerque, New Mexico with the Indians, you know, and those of our brothers that are able-bodied folks that can work, but our jobs are being replaced by computers and robots. I mean, and now, you know, you're homeless, and it's like they're regarding us now as human industrial waste. You know, I can remember when I was homeless for 13 months, and I used to sit in Burger Kings and feed my son, and the closest that I could get to the food was just smelling it. You know, and they would pay $1,600 a month for me to stay in a hotel, but they couldn't afford, you know, I couldn't get an apartment. I could not get an apartment.
Savina, we're going to have to carry on the discussion off the air because the show is going to end now. We have an outro. I want to thank you all and claim this as a May Day 1990 for our struggles to continue. We're going to go now to a tape that shows some of the struggles that have gone on the past 10 years. Thanks all for being here.
What do we want? Houses! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Houses! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Houses! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Houses! When do we want it? Now! Our bodies, our lives, our right to decide! Our bodies, our lives, our right to decide! Our bodies, our... We won't go back! Send the biggest back! We won't go back! Send the biggest back! You can't hide. Ain't gonna be no genocide. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Yeah.